What's up everybody, Coach Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down how you can stop bottom fragging in these tips to get more kills. We're going to be breaking down gunplay tips and tricks and matchup tips so that you can rack up the kills in your games, get top frag again and again, and easily carry tons of your trash teammates and throwers. But go to the Game Leap website in the links down below for in-depth events, VODs, tips and tricks, map guides, agent courses. We got everything you possibly need on the Game Leap website, so go check it out in the links down below. But without further ado, let's jump into the video. Now moving along to the first tip, and this is really important because a lot of you are dying to weapons that are honestly suboptimal and not very powerful at all. You're getting dinked in the head with a sheriff, for instance, or maybe you're running around the corner and getting shotgunned in the face. You need to be consistently changing up the way you play a matchup depending on what type of guns the enemy have. For instance, if the enemy is rocking something like a sheriff and you know they have a sheriff, it is incredibly difficult for them to kill you if you are not actually challenging them with very precise gunplay that plays along areas that they can pre-aim with their crosshair placement. Now, to further explain this example, one of the big ways that you get kills with the sheriff is by enemies actually moving or counter-strafing, they're trying to shoot you in an area that a lot of people peek from, right? And as the sheriff, if you have your crosshair placement on point, you just wait for them to line up that shot and you click them in the head. But what you can do with a lot of guns, if you know enemies are trying to do that, is you can run and gun. That's as simple as it gets. Now, the reason that you're gonna run across their screen and run and gun instead of actually fighting them the regular way is it makes it much harder for them to hit their shot rather than it is for you to hit yours, because you have a spray type weapon and you can just trade bullets. Yes, you're not gonna be able to kill them as quickly, but it doesn't matter because you will deny the enemy their one-shot capability because you are a very difficult to hit target. This is just one example of changing the way you play a matchup. Maybe you challenge an enemy, you hear that sheriff shot, and now running and gunning's on, you run them down and you get a really easy kill on them without actually playing in a way that they could actually turn the tables on you. Now I'm gonna go to the next big tip that is gonna help you rack up them kills. And a lot of you have asked this question: what happens if I flash around a corner or turn a corner and there's like 2 or 3 enemies? What am I supposed to do in this situation? How do I kill them all? Because I see pros kill everybody. How can I kill them all? Because a lot of times I might get 1 kill, or I freak out and get no kills, and then I just feed, right? Well, here's the thing. You turn around a corner and there's multiple targets, whether they're flashed or whatever. You want to perfectly counter strafe and flick and hit the furthest away target with your first shot accuracy. This is incredibly important because that's the hardest person to hit, and you're not going to be able to convert a spray into those people because they're much further away and it's going to be much less reliable. After you hit that initial kill, you can now control your spray to kill the other targets that are closer to you, because those are going to be much more reliable to actually damage or even headshot when you're trying to control your spray rather than the further away target. You do this every single time and you're going to just have more consistent 2Ks and 3Ks rather than insta-killing the person in front and then trying to spray control kill the people in the back. And more often than not, you're not going to be able to kill those people and you're never going to get more than 1 single kill. So definitely incorporate this strategy into each and every one of your engagements with multiple people. Now moving on to the next tip that you really need to start incorporating in your games is actually wall banging with intent. And what I mean by that is you should still be imagining an enemy is behind the wall bang and still be aiming for headshots head level. Now, typically you're going to want to do 2 types of sprays, one in the head level and one in the body level. But the benefit of this is if an enemy is there and you do controlled bursts kind of where they are, a lot of times you'll be able to kill an enemy really easily without wasting all your ammo and having to spray it non-stop. Another benefit of actually targeting enemies or imagining enemies are behind there is you're either going to get the kill or you're going to move on to something else and you cleared that angle. You do not have to just waste your entire magazine, because then sometimes once you do that, enemies will swing off that from a different angle and you risk getting challenged yourself and dying. And that is kind of why a lot of people are afraid to commit to so much wall banging. So definitely keep in mind differences in elevation, whether they're standing or crouching, and then still aim for head level in both cases in different bursts, and you're gonna get a lot more wallbang kills on average rather than just spraying randomly. Then we're going to the next tip that you can start incorporating to get a lot of honestly free kills is bait enemies on purpose. Now there's 2 big scenarios that I think this is really good. The first time is the fake reload. You can sell the fake reload a lot of times. Maybe you just killed an enemy, or maybe you just are reloading a gun nearby an angle you think enemies are at. Enemies will often swing off of that because they hear the sound, they say, hey, this is an opportunity for me to get a free kill, and they swing, thing, but you just reloaded, canceled your reload, and you're just ready to take them on. You found out where they were, they showed themselves, and you were ready for them, so you get an actual easy kill instead. Now, the next thing that you can do a lot of the time, especially if you and a buddy are in one point, but you know an enemy is at that point, like let's say you're attacking Ascent on B, and you know enemies are nearby, but your team wrapped all the way A, and one of your teammates is gonna rotate off. Now, instead of your teammate rotating off quietly, you get that teammate to rotate off as loud as possible. You know, he's reloading, he's jumping away, he just rotates off, and then you wait there. Now, enemies are thinking that you rotated off because they maybe only saw one of you, and he just rotated off, so they are thinking, oh, okay, these guys rotated off, and they're gonna show themselves, and you're gonna get a free kill on them because they just assumed that your team was actually rotating when you actually waited behind purposely so that you could shut them down and get a free kill on them when they're not actually prepared for you. Now, moving on to the next concept that you have to absolutely master, and it's probably one of the reasons why you cannot clutch and you're not clutching like you see the pros do, and you really want to start clutching a lot, but you just lose gunfight after gunfight in clutch scenarios. It's understanding the direct versus the indirect fights. Now, the difference is, one, the direct is you're looking at an enemy, they're looking at you, and you are fighting. You know, you're trading damage, and a lot of times, even if you instantly headshot them, if the enemy fires first, you're gonna take some amount of damage. Like, you don't usually get out of direct engagements with full HP unless someone messes up. Now, there's nothing wrong with some direct engagements, and a lot of times, especially duelists, will take direct engagements when they're trying to clear sight, but even if they lose them, a lot of times they have refraggers in place. Now, there's the opposite, which is the indirect engagements, and these are all the fights where you are challenging people that just don't know that you exist, right? How many people have you shot in the back of the head? You fired when they're looking somewhere else, you shot them when they're trying to fight your allies, whatever the case may be, that is an indirect fight. And the thing is, indirect fights are great because you don't take any damage, right? You're fighting an enemy that is not fighting you back. Now, that being said, indirect fights can be a risk. And what I mean by that is when you are wrapping an enemy, you're lurking, you're trying to be sneaky, you're trying to, you know, wrap through mid, sneak around, or whatever you're doing, you have a higher risk of being in an indirect fight yourself. When you are doing these kind of things, if an enemy is laying there lurking, you have no idea where they are, and they might be able to kill you without you actually getting a fair fight against them. So because of this, you can deduce that indirect fights are typically high risk, high reward. So you might be asking, okay, when do I want to go for fights like these? Well, you really want to force these type of fights when you can't afford to trade any damage. Maybe you know the enemy has max HP and you're incredibly low. You do not want to take a direct fight because you're going to trade damage, and more than likely you're going to get killed in that exchange because they are going to know exactly how weak you are, and the enemy doesn't have to play extremely tight with his crosshair placement. He can really just fly in a way that is just going to guarantee trade damage and get that first shot on you, and you're just going to lose outright. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, if you have full HP and the enemy is very, very weak, you do not want to set up an indirect fight scenario. You want to set up a forced direct confrontation. Knowing when to force a direct encounter or try to wrap, tap the spike, or do something tricky to get that indirect encounter, this is the difference between clutching a whole bunch of rounds and just throwing them instead. Now, moving on to the next big thing that is going to help you rack up the kills in your games is how do you play post-plant when you're down numbers versus when you're up numbers, because a lot of people are really confused on what you need to do to actually win in a post-plant scenario. So let's imagine this first scenario. You are a single person up against 3 enemies. If you go and wrap, let's say you take a teleporter on bind and you go plant, you plant it for free, and you know the enemies are coming after you. What do you do? Because it's very, very difficult to 1v3, am I right? And a lot of people are gonna play this wrong. Now, let's assume that you don't have anything crazy like any ultimates or anything like that. You're just a person, just a regular character, you maybe even have no abilities. Well, traditionally, a lot of people would think, hey, I'm just gonna play passive and play for the spike, right? Wrong. You can't do that when you're in a 1v3 scenario because the enemies will all push onto site, they'll be able to guard every angle, and there's no way you're fragging every single one of them. One of the best things that you can actually do if you get that spike down early, you rotate it fast, is actually push an angle aggressively to cut off an enemy. You actually push in a way that enemies don't expect, you get that kill, and then instantly you dip out of there, maybe back to the spike. now you got that free kill because enemies are like, what the heck, he pushed us? And now you're in a 1v2 scenario, a lot easier than before. You could also aggressively challenge areas like heaven if it's with LOS of the spike, and making it so a power angle that you're going to directly contest is an LOS of the area that you plant is an absolute must when you're trying to win when you have a numbers disadvantage. Now, when you are up in players, the exact opposite thing should happen. The thing is, when you are aggressively taking a duel instead of playing for the spike, that is actually risky. But when you're down in numbers, that is a risk that you're willing to take. You need to be playing for that high risk, high reward. But when you're up in numbers, you need to be playing disciplined and for refrags. And it's far better for you to just be playing power angles and playing off of spike taps, because you and an ally can peek together and challenge enemies. So for example, if you are up 4-2, do not go aggressively challenge angles, because there is a possibility that enemies actually just shut you down, and then you turn into a 2v2, and then maybe you lose because you played aggressively for no reason rather than just playing for the spike tap. On top of this, you gotta understand the mindset of enemies, and when you are down in numbers, the enemies are actually less prepared for a push because they actually have more strength. So they imagine that you are weaker and that you're less likely to play aggressive, but when they are down people, they are more likely to anticipate y'all pushing in and being aggressive, and they are more likely to shut that down. You gotta understand the psyche of players as well, and it's gonna help you actually make accurate mix-ups so you can catch enemies off guard, get more kills, and clutch up more rounds. Now moving on to the 7th thing that you need to start doing more in your game so that you actually start top fragging more and more, and it's whipping out that secondary. A lot of low ranked players really do not whip out their secondary enough, and you should be doing it a lot if I'm being honest. The classic right click is absolutely busted, and a body shot right click will do over 50 damage from close range even if only 2 of the bullets connect in the body, and we don't even want to get started about the fact that it can one-shot max HP enemies if you hit a close range headshot with your right click. You typically want to switch to your secondary if you're out of ammo in your primary or the target is very, very low, because it's a more reliable way to actually trade damage if the target is one shot. So being that secondary, you can jump and right click or even run and right click and still be fairly accurate if the enemy is 1 HP. A lot of times it's actually better than using whatever weapon you're using, and sometimes you just want to switch to it after you kill that first person. You don't have enough time to reload. You switch to that classic and maybe you play for whatever your out is. If they're weak, you just try to kill them traditionally. If they are actually full HP, you go for that max damage right click right in the head. Whatever you have to do to scrape through the gunfight, that can be the difference in winning or losing the round. Now we'll go to the last thing that you need to stop doing if you want to make sure that you are not bottom fragging, and you gotta stop assuming only one person is where you are challenging an enemy. A lot of players, especially in the low ranks, will kill someone and then instantly start reloading as if there's no one nearby. Well, guess what? Maybe their entire team is nearby. A lot of times it's actually better after you kill that first person, you can push up and clear some of the angles first before you back up and reload. The idea behind this is you check and see if any enemies are nearby in an angle waiting for you to reload to punish you. You clear that space and then you back up and reload so you have enough time to reload and you can reload safely. Now on the opposite end of the spectrum, you could punish enemies who do this a lot, where maybe an ally dies near you but not in your LOS, and then you just wait until you hear that reload sound, swing on an enemy and get a free kill, because unfortunately they're subscribed to Pro Guides, not Game Leap, so they're just gonna get shit on in this scenario. But if you want more in-depth advanced guides, definitely go check out the Game Leap website in the description down below, because we have in-depth advanced VOD reviews breaking down what you need to be doing in every single game play by play so that you can start popping off just like some of your favorite players in Valorant. Do yourself a favor, go check it out in the links down below. But thank you so much for coming by. I hope you enjoyed the video. I love your faces, and I'll see you tomorrow.